There are hundreds of videos telling you how to make your apartment look expensive. Velvet cushions, warm bulbs, curtains at the ceiling. The formula is everywhere, and every apartment that follows it looks exactly like every other apartment that follows it. The most interesting spaces you have ever walked into were never designed to look expensive. The look expensive formula has become one of the most replicated aesthetics on the internet and one of the least interesting. Warm neutrals, layered lighting, a single oversized mirror, linen cushions in 3 different textures, curtains hung at the ceiling. The formula works in the sense that it reliably produces rooms that look polished and considered. But it has a fundamental limitation that no amount of execution can overcome. It produces rooms that look like each other. The apartments that people actually remember, the ones that stay with you long after you have left them, were never designed to look expensive. They were designed to express something specific. Point of view, a genuine aesthetic sensibility, a relationship between the person who lives there and the objects, colors, and materials they have chosen to surround themselves with. Artistic design is not a higher budget version of the expensive formula. It is a completely different question. Not how does this room look, but what does this room say? The expensive formula defaults to neutrals, warm whites, soft grays, muted tones that offend no one and express nothing. This is not a design choice. It is the absence of one. And the rooms it produces, however polished, have a quality of anonymity that no amount of careful styling can fully overcome. Artistic apartment design uses color differently, not as atmosphere but as statement. A single wall painted in a deep, specific color that the designer loves without reservation and without concern for whether it photographs well or appeals to a broad audience. Burnt sienna, tobacco brown, ink blue, forest green so dark it is almost black. These colors do not make a room look expensive. They make it look decided, and a decided room is always more interesting than a polished one. The key is conviction. Color used tentatively, in small doses, hedged with neutrals on every other surface, reads as uncertainty. Color used with full commitment, on the walls, reflected in the objects, present in the textiles, reads as a genuine aesthetic position. And a genuine aesthetic position is the foundation of every room worth remembering. In the expensive formula, art is the last thing added to a room, the finishing touch placed on a wall after every other decision has been made. This sequence produces rooms where the art is decorative rather than meaningful, chosen to fill a space and coordinate with the sofa rather than to say something that the designer genuinely needed to say. In artistic apartment design, art is the first decision, the anchor around which every other choice in the room is organized. Not art chosen from an online print shop to coordinate with a color palette, but art that was sought out, lived with, and chosen because it creates a specific feeling that nothing else in the room can create. When art is treated as the foundation of a room, everything changes. The sofa color is chosen to honor the painting, not the other way around. The lighting is positioned to illuminate the artwork at its best rather than the room at its most photographable. The empty wall around the art is as deliberately sized as the art itself, giving it the space it needs to be fully experienced rather than merely seen. The expensive formula avoids personal objects, photographs, collections, inherited things, objects with legible histories, because they are considered too specific, too idiosyncratic, too resistant to the kind of broad appeal that makes a room photograph well and receive universal approval. Artistic apartment design does the opposite. It centers the personal object, the collection of a specific type of thing accumulated over years because of a genuine obsession rather than a decorating intention. Vintage scientific instruments arranged on a shelf not because they look interesting but because the person who lives there is genuinely fascinated by the history of measurement. A collection of ceramics bought from specific makers in specific places that carries within it a record of every journey made in the last decade. A shelf of books that are all actually read, annotated, returned to. These collections are not styled. They are simply present, and their presence creates a quality of authenticity that no amount of carefully chosen prop styling can replicate, because they are evidence of a real person with real interests living a real life in this specific space. One of the most persistent misunderstandings about artistic apartment design is that it must choose between restraint and boldness, that a minimal room cannot be expressive, or that an expressive room cannot be edited. The most interesting small apartments consistently prove this wrong. Restraint and boldness are not opposites in artistic design. They are partners, each one making the other more powerful. A room of complete restraint, bare walls, minimal furniture, cleared surfaces, in which one single bold choice has been made with full conviction creates more visual impact than a room full of bold choices competing for attention. The restraint gives the bold choice the space it needs to be fully experienced. The bold choice justifies the restraint by giving it something worth protecting. This is why the most memorable small apartments often contain one element that stops you completely. One color, one object, one material decision that you were not expecting, surrounded by enough quiet that you can actually hear what it is saying. Every formula for making a room look expensive begins with the same question. How do I want this room to appear to someone who walks into it? It is a question about perception, about the impression made on an external observer, and it produces rooms optimized for first impressions rather than for lived experience. Artistic apartment design begins with a different question entirely. What do I want this room to feel like to live in? Not to visit, not to photograph, not to show to other people, but to actually inhabit every day over years. This question produces completely different answers. Colors chosen for how they feel at 8 in the morning rather than how they read in a photograph. Objects chosen because they create a specific feeling when encountered daily rather than because they contribute to a coherent visual composition. A room designed for the person who lives there rather than for every possible person who might walk through the door. This shift in question, from appearance to experience, from impression to habitation, is the single most important change available to anyone who wants to move from decorating to designing. The highest level of artistic apartment design is reached when the home stops being a backdrop for living and becomes itself a creative statement, when the decisions made in the space are as considered, as intentional, and as genuinely expressive as any other creative work the person who lives there produces. This does not require a large budget or a large space. Some of the most artistically compelling small apartments in the world are in cities where space is scarce and money is limited: Paris, Tokyo, New York, Hong Kong, where constraint has forced a precision of intention that abundance rarely produces. The constraint becomes the creative condition. The small space becomes the reason every decision matters. When an apartment is treated as a creative statement rather than a domestic necessity, something changes in the person who lives there. The daily experience of a space that expresses something genuine, that was made with the same care and intention as any other creative act, produces a quality of life that no amount of expensive-looking styling has ever been able to replicate. The bedroom is the room where artistic apartment design is most completely tested, because it is the room that no one else sees, and therefore the room where there is no external audience to design for. The bedroom reveals what the designer actually believes about beauty and comfort when there is no one watching. An artistically designed bedroom makes no concessions to broad appeal. The color on the walls is the exact color the person who sleeps there wanted, regardless of resale value or photographic neutrality. The art above the bed is the specific piece that this person needs to see last thing at night and first thing in the morning. The objects on the bedside surface are the objects that have meaning, not the objects that look like they belong on a bedside surface. The result is often a room that would not appear in a design magazine and would not receive universal approval. And that is, for the person who wakes up in it every morning, more genuinely luxurious than any formula-driven bedroom could ever be. Every apartment says something. The question is whether it says something intentional or something default, whether it expresses a genuine point of view or simply reflects the aggregate of convenient decisions made without a guiding artistic intention. The apartments explored in this video say specific things. This is a person who values the evidence of time over the appearance of newness. This is a person whose relationship with color is confident enough to commit to it fully. This is a person whose collections are the record of a genuine intellectual and aesthetic life. This is a person who designed their home for the experience of living in it rather than the impression of showing it. Your apartment can say any of these things. It can say something else entirely, something specific to you that no video and no formula can anticipate. The only requirement is the willingness to ask the question seriously. Not how do I want this room to look, but what do I want this room to say? The expensive formula gives you a room that anyone could live in. Artistic design gives you a room that only you could live in, and that difference is worth more than any material or any budget. Ask the right question, not how does this look, what does this say? Subscribe for a new interior video every week. And tell me in the comments, what does your apartment say about you right now, and what do you wish it said instead?